finally the end, I guess. The apocalypse.
But 343 have inherently ruined the entire Halo franchise.
This is just one of those things where I don't think Halo Infinite really has too much long left in it.
They're doing a great job, but there's like a problem here and there. No, bro. This developing studio is a nightmare. They need to have Halo legitimately ripped from their hands.
Halo. It's finished.
No. I think we're just getting started.
To say the last couple of weeks have been chaotic within the Halo community would be quite the understatement. There has been a ton of stuff that's happened that's caused quite the bit of drama. The catalyst for these events would definitely be the mass layoffs that Microsoft have suffered that have affected a multitude of divisions under the company, one of which obviously being 343 Industries. And although I'm late to talk about all of this, I decided it would be best to wait and to see if any more revelations came about and if there would be more context to the event. There's also been a lot of assumptions that the community have made that today I would like to comment on. We will obviously start by talking about the layoffs and move on from there, as there is a lot to cover. But anyway, since there is so much to go over, if you do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new here. I really do appreciate it, and it really does help the channel out. Anyway, without wasting any more of your time, let's jump straight in. So from my understanding regarding the layoffs, the three main teams that have taken an impact at 343 Industries are the campaign team, the art team, and the animation team. Obviously, all areas have taken effect. That includes stuff regarding the multiplayer, but the main three that were affected were the three I just mentioned. We don't have exact numbers on how many people were laid off, but supposedly around a quarter of the company has been let go. But I believe it is worth mentioning that 343 is still sort of in this restructuring phase. We know recently a lot of the management changed, with people like Bonnie Ross leaving the company, and Pierre Hintz took charge. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. For those of you that aren't aware who this is, he's basically the guy that saved MCC, so I think 343 are now in much better hands. And I don't intend to throw any shade at Bonnie Ross when I say that, but it does put my mind at ease knowing the guy that saved Master Chief Collection is in charge of the company. A lot of people have really misinterpreted the layoffs, thinking that this means Halo is dead and that Microsoft have completely given up on the IP or have given up on Halo Infinite. And whether you see this as a good or bad thing, this is not the case. Near the end of December, we obviously had a community livestream which showed us some stuff about Season 3 and Season 4. We got to see some Forge content for Season 4, stuff that would be coming during that season, even though some content creators would try and claim that Season 4 has now allegedly been cancelled. This is not the case. We know the game also recently had a new live service lead, this being Sean Barron, who seems to definitely have a clear vision at where he wants to take Infinite's live service model. And since he has sort of took over the live service, there has been clear improvements made. We had the winter update, and that's had much more frequent content, and Season 3 and Season 4 are shaping up to seem pretty interesting. Now, the layoffs will likely impact development heavily, and that does include the multiplayer, as I said. I feel like a lot of the people that were let go, maybe it's just in a position where their skills were no longer necessary. As far as we're all aware, the campaign, there was no real DLC that got very far past the planning stage, which is why most of the campaign team was likely let go. Now that co-op's launched and those like last missing campaign cosmetics are now in the game and all that sort of stuff, I guess their skills weren't really necessary anymore, which is very unfortunate because I was really hoping Infinite would get some level of campaign DLC. Maybe this will just be continued in a new game, or maybe they'll change the mind. I don't know how it's going to work. Even with leaks, everything is very hard to understand. I've heard some people say we were supposed to be getting a new campaign inside of Halo Infinite, but it's not DLC, but that just sounds like DLC. But regarding the campaign side of things, who knows at this point? I really don't, and no one else does either, other than 343, but unfortunately they're not really telling us anything about that. And then when it comes to the art and animation team, I don't really know why most of them would have been let go, but maybe there's just enough things to work with now that would last 343 a good while. Obviously not everyone from the art team and not everyone from the animation team has been let go either. There's still people there in all of those categories. And although I do think the layoffs will affect future development, I think most of the content that is planned for Season 3 and Season 4 is pretty much finished, so they shouldn't really see much of an impact at all. And by the time Season 4 is over, they'll probably have people that have done most of the work on Season 5 anyway, so I can't really see there being any major delays or anything negative affecting the future seasons of Infinite. But when it comes to the layoffs, I definitely think the biggest thing that had Halo fans absolutely terrified was the fact that Joe Staten was no longer with 343. The thing is, which I believe more people need to understand, is Joe was never going to stay there permanently. His role was to get Halo Infinite across the finish line, cut whatever needs to be cut, and just get the game out the door in a playable state, which he did. And now that the game is in a much better condition after the Winter Update in Season 2, his duty was fulfilled, and now I believe he's going to resume his prior role before rejoining 343, so he's going back to work. I think it's like Xbox Publishing or Microsoft Publishing, something along those lines. So he's still remaining with Microsoft, just not at 343 Industries anymore. And although it is super unfortunate he is no longer tied to the game, I definitely appreciate the work he had put into it, and he definitely helped get the franchise or the game back on track for a little while there. But when it comes to the layoffs, there has been two responses. One that has come straight from 343 studio head, and another that has come from Phil Spencer, which is a bit less of a response, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. The first response reads as follows. Halo and Master Chief are here to stay. 343 Industries will continue to develop Halo now and in the future, including epic stories, multiplayer, and more of what makes Halo great. And not long after this was posted, IGN had actually conducted an interview with Phil Spencer, who had some extra things to say about Halo and about 343. To be honest, for the most part, it's just a bunch of alphabet soup, but to summarise, he basically said that Halo is a key part of Xbox's legacy, it's a part of Xbox's lore, and 343 is at the heart of Halo, and they expect to continue support and for Halo to grow over time. He basically just said that Halo is hopefully going to be around for as long as Xbox is. The thing is, both of these responses don't give us much of anything really. They don't really indicate too much about the future, just that there will be a future. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do wish there was a bit more said. I mean, with 343's response, it's very, very understandable that it's an extremely minimal response and that practically nothing was said in it. They couldn't really say anything bad. They're obviously not going to slander Microsoft in any capacity, as that is, you know, they're all part of the same company, but they're not going to sit there and slander the people that give them money to make the video games. As for Phil Spencer's, I mean, again, I guess he's not going to really say anything that makes Microsoft look bad, but I do wish there was a little bit more said. The thing is, for quite some time, the community has just been blaming 343 for so much for the downfall of the franchise, and although personally I still love the games, I loved Halo 4, loved Halo 5, I love Halo Infinite, I can admit some of those games do have their faults. There has been broken promises. They have lied to us on multiple occasions. There was features that we said we were going to get at launch, like Forge and Co-op, that we had to wait for. And although Infinite's Forge is amazing, we were told it would be there straight away. Split-screen co-op was completely cancelled, which devastated a lot of people. Whether or not they would have actually used it isn't really what's important. It's the fact that we were promised that that would be there, and only for us to be told a couple months later that that is now scrapped entirely. So I fully understand the community being annoyed at 343 in a lot of regards, but what does really grind my gears is the fact that people always just blame 343, and none of that blame is ever pointed towards Microsoft. 343 is made up of a lot of people who are extremely passionate about Halo, that share a lot of the same childhood memories as the same people who are complaining about the games currently do. And I feel like the people working there have really been screwed up by upper management on both 343's side of things and by Microsoft. Xbox as the publisher have a responsibility to make sure the game is in a suitable state on release. If we look at what's come before, we know that Phil Spencer has likely tested all these games himself. We saw how Master Chief Collection launched, and although MCC is basically perfect now, how it launched was quite terrible. Halo 4, to my knowledge, didn't really have any major problems. It just wasn't really what some people wanted, but personally I love Halo 4, I love its story. I'm not going to sit here and say it's the best Halo game, because I don't believe that it is. But I still think Halo 4 is a solid game, and a solid experience as a whole. Halo 5 definitely launched with some missing features, and definitely felt like a lot of things had been scaled back. And then with Infinite, for Forge to not be there, for the game to only launch with like 3 multiplayer playlists. Sure, it was technically in beta, but even when the full release rolled around, not much had changed. And a lot of that is down on Microsoft, you know, sort of putting this pressure on and setting these deadlines in place. They would have people testing the game, and they could sit there and think like, hold on, are we really going to launch this Halo game? This is supposed to be our flagship IP. This is our big seller. This franchise is the reason people buy Xboxes. Are we going to sit here and let it launch without all these things that we had told 343 to promise people would be here? Considering all the employees go under Microsoft's payroll too, obviously the layoffs, I mean, that's not just something that's affected 343, that's something that's going to affect a lot of people, but it's definitely not going to help 343 out in any stretch of the imagination. Back in 2011, there was actually an interview with Phil Spencer who said, if we lose our way with Halo, we lose our way with Xbox. And although, as I mentioned, I absolutely love these games, I enjoy playing them and I play them pretty much every single day, I can admit that there is faults, there is things wrong with them, they do have their fair share of issues. I'm not going to go into detail because I don't need to, everyone's already spoke about the things that are wrong with the modern Halo games. But I do feel like people really need to understand that modern game development is much more difficult, and when Halo Infinite was supposed to be a much bigger project, you need more time, you need more money, you need more manpower. They wanted it to have this massive open world and to have all of these big multiplayer modes and to be this big live service game, and yet the game didn't launch with the content to support that sort of model. Infinite's campaign is one of my favourites in the series, but it does leave a lot to be desired. I think the open world is very fun to explore. I have such a blast, honestly, sometimes just going around with a blind skull on, taking screenshots of the scenery, because they've crafted such a gorgeous open world. I just wish there was more. But circling back, if we look at 343's management, which has obviously changed up a lot now, so a lot of the people that probably caused some of these faults are now no longer there. But then we look at Microsoft too, and they are equally as at fault. They obviously wanted this game to be huge, and they should have given it more time to cook. Instead, no, they wanted it to be the launch title with the Xbox Series X, which is understandable. I can understand why they want a big game to launch with their new console. But at the same time, why would you release the new Halo game if you know it's not ready? I mean, I'm pretty sure most of the people that work at 343 are contractors anyway, and most of the time their contracts never get renewed. They're there for 18 months, and then someone else has to pick up where they left off. There's just so much wrong going on behind the scenes. It is absolutely insane, and I do feel really sorry for 343 in a way, because I feel like a lot of people do just solely put the blame on them and don't see that this is sort of a collective effort in a way. People will just harass like community managers at 343 or just regular employees that are just pouring their heart and soul into this franchise. I mean, I get at this point why the community is stressed and why they're agitated. It makes perfect sense, but I feel like the way a lot of people go about it isn't really fair. I mean, it feels like a new argument surfaces amongst the community every single day, or an old one resurfaces, like whether or not foreigners are supposed to be humans. They're obviously not, but I'm not going to dive into that kind of worms. And then because of all the recent stuff that's happened, not just the layoffs, the fact that in China an Xbox Series Xbox was spotted with Starfield on it rather than Halo. In reality, this is literally just being done to promote the new game, and because Halo, I'm pretty sure, is region locked in China. I'm pretty sure Halo Infinite isn't even in China. I could be wrong, that's just something that I'd seen. But obviously, if they're changing the box art, it is simply just to promote their new IP. Except then the layoffs hit straight after that, and there was a recent Xbox research survey that was sent out that people are kind of, I think they're taking it a little bit too far in this regard. There's a question on there that's like, are you happy with 343, are you done playing Halo Infinite, and that sort of stuff. But this isn't the first time they've done surveys like this, it's just come at very, very poor timing. But to bring things back around, I did mention earlier on that 343 is still going through this restructuring phase. A lot of the management is changing, and in a few months from now, the company is going to be very different. I think it's pretty safe to say that the Halo franchise isn't going anywhere, and there is a lot of hope for the future. Things might be rough right now, and again, I understand the skepticism and the anger from the community. It feels like we've been going through the same course for the past decade now. But I do believe that for some people, maybe Halo just isn't for them anymore. And I think if it's getting to a point where the game is stressing you out that much, or the franchise is stressing you out just to be around, then maybe it is time to just take a step back, even if it's only temporarily. And if you are a fan of Halo Infinite, well, there's still plenty of things to look forward to. We get Season 3 soon, and that's going to be pretty damn hype. Obviously, there isn't loads of stuff coming with it, but it is, in a way, that soft relaunch that fans were asking for. We're getting a new weapon, we're getting new maps, we're getting shorter seasons. There's some pretty cool customization changes that are coming, some of which I won't really talk about, but there's some cool stuff coming to the game. And we already know to expect like some pretty cool content during Season 4 too on the Forge side of things, and I imagine there's a lot more in store as well. Halo always will be one of the most iconic video game franchises of all time, and Master Chief is probably always going to remain the mascot of Xbox. Master Chief is to Xbox what Mario is to Nintendo. He's always just sort of been there, he's always been the face of the brand. The franchise definitely isn't going anywhere anytime soon. We've just got to hope that sooner rather than later, Microsoft realizes how important Halo is to the branding of Xbox and how important it is to the company, and gives 343 the support they need. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I would love to see some spin-offs done by other studios. I would love more Halo stuff, and I'm surprised that we haven't really had much else other than like Halo Wars and Spartan Assault, because the Halo universe is absolutely huge, and I think really they should be giving other studios the opportunity to make their own Halo games. But I do believe the mainline stuff should stick with 343. If you need to bring in some other studios to support them, then fair enough. Obviously, we know Certain Affinity is working on the rumoured Battle Royale mode. There's a completely different studio which assists on Forge stuff, and a lot of other studios did assist to get the game out the door. But I mean, like, at this point, with the absurd amount of companies they own, like, in future, if you want to take another crack at an open world Halo game, why not let Bethesda give you a hand? But anyway, I think I'm getting very close to rambling territory now, so I'm just going to say a few last things before I close this video off. Halo is a franchise that has always centered around hope, and Master Chief as a character embodies that. Sure, it might seem like the glory days of the games are long in the past at this point, but I feel like Halo fans have always managed to hold on to that hope, and at this point, we've just got to hold on just a little bit longer. There's very exciting things to come, some that have been leaked, some that I guarantee we probably know nothing about, and I am still very excited for the future of this franchise. But anyway folks, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.